Hey everyone, welcome back to my podcast, Reel It In. We just finished recording season 1, pretty much all of Star Wars, so now I'm gonna shift gears and get into Disney. Today's video is about the live action Mulan. So in this podcast, I'm actually also recording a video for it. For those of you who are only my podcast listeners, I will include a link below so you can check out the video I made. This will contain spoilers. I tried to wait until the live action Mulan was available for everyone on Disney Plus, so those of you who didn't pay $30 for it, here you go. This is my take on it. So Disney made a big deal about how the new live action Mulan was going to be more culturally and historically accurate and also follow the original legend of the Ballad of Mulan. They promised us more representation, a thrilling story, and a fix to all those inaccuracies back in 1998. But did they really have a lot to fix? Although there are a few culturally wrong things in the 1998 animated Mulan, I think it did a much better job than the modern 2020 live action. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the original ballad and what we do and do not know from it. So the exact period when Hua Mulan lived is unclear, but it is widely believed the story takes place during the northern and southern dynasties. So when China was split in two, essentially. Back then, outlying tribes invaded China's central plains, and the imperial government decreed that every household must send a man to the front line. Mulan's brother, who was too young to conscript, so her elderly father, who was injured, had to go. Concerned for his health, Mulan disguised herself as a man and took her father's place in the war. She fought adequately for 12 years, contributing to numerous victories. After the war ended, the emperor bestowed honors on her and wished to make Mulan a high-ranking official. Mulan declined, preferring to return home to care for her aging parents. It was only when her fellow soldiers came to visit Mulan's village that they discovered her secret. And based on Chinese historical documents, a real war did happen between the northern Wei state, I think. I'm really sorry if I pronounce these wrong. I'm going to try my best. I also made a point not to pronounce too many things because I don't want to offend anyone or anything. So between the northern Wei state and the Mongolic state called the Rorons. The big question is, did Disney break their promise? I'm not sure how you expect a movie heavy in Chinese culture to accurately portray what you want it to if the heads of the movie are all white. Like the director, the script writers, the costume designers. So in this video, I'm going to try and compare the animation to the live action based on what Disney promised us, while also throwing in my own critiques. I also did some research on what exactly was culturally accurate and what was not. That being said, I'm not an expert on the Chinese culture, nor am I a part of that culture. So it's not my intention to offend anyone. I'm just trying to make a video. So I'm going to start by saying, at the beginning of the animation, the portrayal of the Huns is quite racist, especially to Central Asians, not to mention that the Huns are supposed to represent basically all Asian nomadic people. So when we first see Mulan in the animation, she's memorizing and copying Chinese characters onto her skin, and she's studying values of women, which is, as far as I can tell, was accurate for women during that time. Women were taught feminine virtues and how to be a proper female in society. Mostly just do what any man tells you to do and, don't talk. When I say men, I mean like the father, your husband, and if you can believe it, eventually your son. Can you imagine having to take orders from your child? Like, you push that boy out of your vagina and 16 years later, he has the audacity to order you around? Like, boy, my hip bones shifted because of you. So then Mulan ties a sack of feed to her dog, and the dog can do her chores for her. You're not even 5 minutes into the movie, and you already have a perfect example of Mulan's ingenuity and her cleverness. which you see all throughout the whole animated movie. So Mulan seems to live, still in the live action, Mulan seems to live in a large community with multiple houses surrounded by a wall, which I think is how most people lived back then. They have a moon gate, which is popular in Chinese gardens, but I think the placement of the ancestral shrine is a bit odd. Usually I think the shrine is supposed to be in your own house, not out in a garden as we see in Mulan. We see many images of dragons used to represent the Fa family, but according to ancient culture, I think the dragon symbol is only reserved for like the imperial family. So I think that was also another inaccuracy. In Chinese culture, crickets are considered to be lucky, so the animation had that. So in the live action, the storyline diverges from the ballad in the opening scene when Mulan is shown as a girl who is already powerful and already knows her way around like a weapon. You know, in the ballad, Mulan is a simple girl who sits weaving at her loom and is visibly upset. The girl can't even hear her own thoughts because she's so worried, and like her sigh is just too loud. She's worried because her father, who has been injured, has been conscripted by the army. And this is where your first problem with characterization comes in the movie. If you start Mulan off to be at the top of her game, she has nowhere to go in terms of developing her character. She's already at the peak of her power, so anything she does that is supposed to be more impressive, it just won't be. And in a situation like this, you know, you could have Mulan fall from power because that's the only other direction she has to go. You know, you can make her physically weak and have her build back up her strength, but with a renewed sense of purpose and a new lesson learned, which, spoiler, doesn't happen. So the fact that Mulan was already born as a perfect warrior takes away from what made her character so fantastic in the 1998 animated version. She was someone who made mistakes, even though she tried her best, which is relatable. That's something that everyone does pretty much almost every day. She's someone who learned from them and used her brain to outsmart her competitors and succeed in the end. She proved that you don't need to be the strongest person in the room to be great and successful. She's someone who worked hard with grit and determination, kind of like everyone else who is only good at a craft or at a sport or anything because they practiced and worked on it for years. They put the hours in. So the live action movie also portrays that chi is only something that warriors should be born with. Only male warriors are people who can utilize it. But in many cultures, someone's chi it's like their soul. It's their life force. Like I have chi, you have chi, everybody has chi. If you are, and any living thing has chi. Like a plant, a river, the earth, it's not some special power that only certain people have. Can someone's chi be more powerful than others? Sure. But it's still something that everyone already has. And depending on your will and mindset, you can also strengthen and weaken your own chi. So as an example, like if you're in a bad headspace, you might meditate for a week. And by the end of that week, your chi will have improved. It'll have strengthened. Your headspace will have improved. That's how you use your chi, basically. So in the live action, at first glance, the structure of Mulan's home in the live action series seems to fit with the 1998 version, but these styles of homes are called tulos and are actually a southern design, and the Legend of Mulan takes place in the more northern regions of China. So that's kind of an inaccuracy that they used in the movie. The scene changes to the Silk Road, and a trader comes upon the witch, who aesthetically looks amazing. But in Chinese folklore, I haven't really come across many witches. Well, at least not bad witches. I found more tales about people turning into evil spirits, or their unnatural abilities made people believe an evil spirit resided inside of them. A popular one that I've noticed across many Asian cultures is like the evil fox spirit. In China, they're called Hulijing. Again, I'm sorry about if these pronunciations are really bad. And in Japan, they're called kitsunes. You might recognize the Japanese name for the fox spirit if you watched Teen Wolf. Void styles can step on me. And there are women in Chinese culture who can do magic, but they're more like shamans. They aren't ostracized for their magical abilities. Shamans are usually elders of some sort, someone who holds a high place in society and is called upon to help with important decisions, heal the sick or bless like a hunting party. I've only seen them condemned in history due to them using their abilities to hurt or kill someone. And let's face it, most people are condemned for that, or they should be. And I will give credit to where credit is due. The live action did get the correct enemy group. In the ballad, they go to war against the Rogrons, which is the group in the movie. So that's more accurate and less racist, I think, than using the Huns in the animated movie. So even though the witch is not culturally accurate, there was a lot of potential for her character. One, you could have made her a supernatural being. She could have been like a spirit of some sort. That would have been interesting to see. She should have been the main villain. The woman who was scorned by society because she was different. A gifted woman, her plan to seize the throne and take power. Borikhan and his army should have been the ones helping the witch. And you can keep Borikhan as kind of like a conniving second who his ultimate goal is also power, but he knows he cannot succeed without the witch's help. It shouldn't be the witch needing Borikhan. It should be Borikhan needing the witch. And you'll get why I say this later on, but this would have made the movie, I think, much better and make the witch's eventual character arc make a lot more sense. And I mean, it's not like we think the witch is weak. We see her power when she threatens Borikhan and says she could rip him to pieces in a blink of an eye. And she can shapeshift, kill tons of people in seconds. What is stopping her from being the main villain? I'm asking a real question. What is the reason? And we find out through exposition that the witch just wants to be loved and accepted, and I think this information should have come later on in the movie. Maybe when she and Mulan are facing off alone for the first time. I mean, come on. We all know how much villains love to monologue. And I just think revealing this information now takes away the mystery of the witch and consequently my interest in her character. So now, still in the live action, we shift to grown-up Mulan riding a horse, and she spots two rabbits running alongside each other. She later tells her family about how one was a male and the other a female. And I understand that this is directly supposed to reference the last two lines of the ballad, which is, male hares like to kick and stomp, female hares have eyes misty and glazed, but if the hares are running side by side, who can tell which is he or she? And I took the meaning of those lines in the ballad, that standing apart, it's easy to tell one, gender from the other, but put them together, in action, working together, fighting together, they're equal. You will see that it's not easy to tell the difference between them, basically. I liked that they put that little Easter egg, get it, in there, but it does fall kind of flat based on the movie as a whole. Firstly, Mulan spots them while they're running and can easily tell which is which. And that's literally the exact opposite of the lines. You can tell they tried to add in these deep messages in the movie, but it didn't quite hit the nail with the hammer. It tries to set up the tone of the movie, and by the end of the live action, the sentiment, it just doesn't deliver. For the matchmaking scene, usually, we're back to the animated now, for the matchmaking scene, usually the matchmaker would go to the family's house and ask for the daughter's birth date, and you would match it with a similar birth date for the male. Although it is true that Mulan has zero choice in the marriage, as back then marriage in Chinese cultures was more about uniting two whole families instead of just a boy and a girl. And I'm saying boy and a girl because of the time period it's set in, just so you know. As for the makeup, I think in the animation, Mulan's pale face makeup is okay. I've personally seen that more in like a Japanese style. But like I said, I'm not an expert. So I do also believe that the colors on Mulan's face in the animation, I think they have to be a little bit lighter. I haven't seen many like darker face paints. So, and then when Mulan finally meets the matchmaker, she does so in a group of girls. And I think realistically, she would most likely be meeting the matchmaker alone or with, all the women from her family. So now, corresponding that scene with the live action, I liked the instrumental of Bring Honor to Us All while the weird like makeup montage is playing. I think it's a nice nod. The makeup for Mulan does seem to be more accurate than in the animation. Again, I'm basing this on pictures that I've seen. I'm not a makeup expert culturally or otherwise. I personally rarely wear makeup. So if I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments. Last thing I want to be is ignorant or anything. So please correct me if I need correcting. So in the matchmaker scene, you can kind of tell that, well, in the movie, Disney is trying to do their own thing. But with this matchmaker scene, they're like throwing back a vibe from the animated movies. And these two tones together contradicts each other, because we already know that Mulan is powerful. Like when she was a child, she ran on a roof and she martial arted her way to the ground. Like, and now I'm supposed to believe that she can catch a tea set like from midair and then immediately flops over. Like, pick a lane, please. Is she clumsy yet charming, or is she confident and powerful? Also, I know that they needed a reason for the matchmaker to dishonor Mulan, but I don't think the tea set is a good example. Like, for one, the sister is the one who screamed due to her fear of spiders. And when the spider scuttled over to the matchmaker, she herself is the one who like flew back and kicked over the table. I mean, and like Mulan is the one who tried to help, and she caught the tea set. If you wanted her dishonor to fit the tone of the movie, then maybe have her use her power to stop the spider. That way the matchmaker can be like, she can run out to the center of the community and scream like, "Witch! Dishonor!" And that would actually have made more sense later on for Mulan's character development, and I'll get to that. So in the 1998 animated version, during Conscription Day, we see Mulan's dad open a wardrobe to reveal his armor. Most everyone back then did have to bring their own belongings when going to war. The army really only provided food for them, and I guess like some shelter, I guess. And then the scene where Mulan cuts her hair is actually inaccurate, as during that time period, it was a Confucius belief that every part of you, including your hair, belonged to your parents, and to cut those locks would be disrespectful to your family. Also just like genuinely harming any part of yourself. Like, you just didn't do that based on your belief. So I suppose that is one thing that the 2020 version got correct. So that's, good on them for that. So back in the animated movie, a character that I think was missed in the live action was Mushu, or maybe even a character like Mushu. Apparently, he was kept out of live action due to a high number of Chinese nationalists being offended by his character. I don't know too much about that, so do with that information what you will. Back in the live action, the conscription scene passes, and Mulan, she just leaves. We don't really even get a shot of it. She's just gone. And there's no emotion like from the audience on this decision. There's zero, what looks to be zero worry from the family, like when they discover her gone the next day. This makes us as an audience feel that the stakes aren't that high. Like, show some fear, some weeping. If Mulan gets found out, they could and would kill her. And in the 1998 version, when her father makes the flower blossom analogy to Mulan after she's messed up with the matchmaker, I always get so teary-eyed. I never in the live action feel the care that Mulan's father has for her. That's something that I think should have been added in the live action. I also just want to point out that I think it's kind of funny when Mulan calls Mushu a lizard, and Mushu gets like very offended because only Western style dragons are characterized like after lizards. Eastern/Asian dragons are characterized more after snakes, which is also made a point when everyone is bathing in the river and Mushu has to bite Ling's butt. Fun fact for you. So some of the changes they made from the 1998 animated Mulan to the live action kind of seem to undermine a lot of the important messages. Like in the training montage for the animated movie where Mulan figures out to use the medals as a climbing crutch because like you physically can't climb the pole with them any other way, proves that you have to use brains over brawn. Like how in the end, strategy is more important than muscle. You know, in the live action, they replaced this scene with Mulan being the only one to make it up a huge mountain, carrying buckets filled with water and a T-pose all the way up to the top. Like a T-pose with heavy buckets of water up a mountain. Upstairs, first of all, stairs up a mountain. As someone who has lifted weights a very good portion of their life, that position is excruciating and it's hard. And as someone who also hates running on an incline, that whole scenario is basically impossible. And yet Mulan just does it. Kind of proving that she was more brawn than brain and that it was more important to be strong than clever. That's just my take on that whole scene. And then the scene at the end of the animated movie where they all dress in drag and use the silk sashes to climb up the poles of the palace, it shows that the lesson they learned early on was valuable. Like it literally allowed them to save the emperor. So now we're back at the Roran camp in the live action movie where all the other clans are upset that they have to rely on a witch. They obviously don't like her or accept her. So that begs the question again. Why, witch, are you allying yourself with them? You could literally defeat every single person in that tent. If you want love and acceptance, like, it's plain to see you won't be getting it from them. You know, the very people who promised it to you or promised that they would give it to you. And if you did what they wanted, which one isn't what love and acceptance is. Love and acceptance is just that. You don't have to do anything special to get it. So that's confusion number one with the witch. The whole situation with the witch, it just makes me so frustrated and mad because I know it could have been good. Like, she could have been such a good villain and character. And she just wasn't. So now, in the live action, we transition to the army marching to the massacred village. And compared to the animation, this is very disappointing. And it lacks the abrupt change in emotion one is supposed to get while watching it. You know, in the animated movie, the transition from a girl worth fighting for to the imagery of the burned village, where everyone walks through it in stunned silence, is one of the best transitions in like cinematic history. You feel the silliness, jest, and goofiness of the song, and thereby the characters, and then bam, death and destruction. Like, this is war. This is what happens in war. You can see the reality of war hit the characters for the first time, and it even heightens the stakes for the rest of the movie. Like, this conflict that they have to face, it's real, and it's bad. And I think that's something that the animation does beautifully, and I think could have been improved on in the live action. So finally, the witch and Mulan come to a confrontation. I really like this scene, but I could have liked it better because I feel like I know what they are trying to do with the characters. I could tell that the witch and Mulan are supposed to be mirror opposites of each other. Each looked upon as an outcast, although they didn't really do a good job of portraying Mulan as an outcast, which if you go back to my T-set analysis would have helped with that. They just kind of said that she was an outcast and went on from there. But anyways, the witch is supposed to represent what essentially Mulan could have become. And the witch, I think, is supposed to both admire and despise Mulan, because here is Mulan, a warrior and also powerful, and the witch admires that, but also she despises her because she wasn't cast out from her family and home. And I think we're supposed to see some like kind of eternal turmoil with the witch. All of this I just said we don't see really in the live action. And it just makes me mad because they're just like little things like this that could have improved this whole storyline and character, and they just don't do it. Anyway, Mulan realizes she has to stop hiding behind someone who she isn't. She strips herself of the armor and she flings out her hair, which is a powerful scene. But I think it could have been even more powerful if at the beginning of a movie they showed like a short scene of Mulan like strapping her father's armor onto her. And like, like when she fully dons the helmet, like you see that she has fully become the facade of a man. So it's just little things like that. In the animated movie, the avalanche scene will always be peak action sequence. It showcases Mulan's wit and even her bravery, as she pretty much waits until the very last moment when the Huns are like physically upon her to shoot her firework. The beloved avalanche scene in the live action kind of undermines the message of Mulan's cleverness. Like in the 1998 movie, Mulan shoots the firework and it to hit the mountain. And in the live action, she does use a clever tactic with putting the helmets on the rocks behind the enemy to make it look like there's more than just one person. But that whole scene just seems kind of off to me. Like she collected maybe 7 helmets, and instead of the Rorans like going to check out the situation or like battle them in close combat, they turn the catapult around to fire it at 7 people. Like, what did you think was going to happen with that? They missed by a long shot and kind of caused the avalanche based on their own stupidity, not because Mulan had outsmarted them. In the animation, after Mulan is found out about being a girl, we can see her emotion about trying to find out who she really is and thinking she failed. If you wanted a phoenix rising from the ashes moment, like, this is it. Mushu even makes a comment where he's trying to he spits on the helmet to improve the reflection and says all it needs is a little spit. Like, you can take that to mean all it needs is a little more grit and hard work. And then Mulan makes the decision to go back and help. Like, that is peak Mulan character. That is her falling to rock bottom almost and then getting back up. Like, that is her phoenix moment. And I didn't see anything like that in the live action. Like in the live action, Mulan gets discovered to be a female, and she goes and kind of cries in a corner, like most girls do after a bad day. The witch then finds her, and they sort of have what I'm assuming to be is a heart-to-heart talk. This is, I think, is another failed opportunity with the character of the witch and Mulan. The witch admits that she relates to Mulan because they are similar. Like I said earlier, opposite mirrors. And the witch asks Mulan to join her, basically so they can rule China together. I think leading up to this point, we're supposed to see that the witch is more of a lost soul. Still scorned and betrayed and hurt. But we could see that she's doing this because of her hurt feelings and not because she actually physically hates everyone and everything. I believe when Mulan says that she knows her place and she knows basically who she is, and even though the army pushed her away, she's going to help them. That is, I think, the turning point, or what it's supposed to be the turning point for the witch. That's the moment that makes her start to think hey, maybe I don't have to be like this. I'm in this situation and right now I don't know how to get out of it, but maybe I don't have to be this way. Because then the witch then tells Mulan about Bori Khan's plan. Everything that I just said, did we actually get that interaction in the movie? No. Is that what I think the movie producers were going for and what should have happened? Yes, I do. So we're at the point now where the witch who's disguised as an official tells the emperor that Bori Khan wants a one-on-one duel with him, and the emperor agrees. But duels between two government leaders wasn't really a thing back then in China, or even is a thing now in China. So I think that's a lot of Western influence being thrown randomly into the script. A script that is supposed to be historically and culturally accurate. And then Mulan's like rushing into the palace, and the emperor gets kidnapped by Bori Khan. Mulan discovers the witch who is sitting upon the throne. Mulan then asks the witch to stop and help. The witch says no, that there's basically no saving her. And then she flies away and leads Mulan straight to Bori Khan and the emperor. Like she literally said no and then actioned a yes. So to improve this scene, I'd make it a bit more personal with Mulan, maybe saying some deep stuff, reminding the witch not to become what everyone thinks she is, that even though everyone else has cast her aside, Mulan sees her as she is and not as an enemy. I was picking up some kind of vibes between them, so that's why I would have added that line in there. But anyway, you would then see the witch kind of contemplate between the power of the throne and helping Mulan out, and with a frustrated cry transforms into a bird and flies in the direction of the emperor. And then the following scene where the witch shows up and tells Bori Khan how a woman leads the army, and she's just like her and from a small village, basically describing Mulan as someone the witch could have been, is when the audience knows for certain the witch's heart has changed and she is against the Rohirrims now. If the movie had followed the suggestions that I've been giving you guys for these past couple minutes, this would have been such a good and pivotal scene. But because this dialogue seems to come out of nowhere, it just makes us even more confused about the witch's character. And she was bad, but now she's just good. So now this next scene, I have a few suggestions on where it could go. The scene where the witch dies in Mulan's arms, as is, it did stick with me. I was definitely feeling some emotions at that point. And I think that's because I could see what they were trying to do with the character. So following my suggestions, the witch sacrificing herself for Mulan would have been more emotional and I think more sad too. However, this is the most powerful witch in all of China. You're telling me she can't stop an arrow or stop Bori Khan from shooting an arrow? Or disintegrate the arrow in real time? If she was going to die, make it be because Bori Khan releases an unstoppable force or something. If we're sticking with my original suggestion of the witch being the main villain and Bori Khan being the second, I think there should have been a fight scene between those two. And since the witch is so powerful, her death would make more sense if Bori Khan had access to some sort of witch kryptonite. And he plans to use this to defeat Mulan, but the witch takes it instead to save her. Those are just my thoughts on how you could have ended her character, but still had a great character. In actuality though, the witch had zero character arc. There's no build up to the witch sacrificing herself for Mulan. The sacrifice was beautiful and I wanted to feel deeply about it, but that scene, it was missing depth, and the impact of it was, I think, lost on the audience. There was never any push and pull between these two powerful characters in the movie that would have led to the witch's sacrifice meaning something. And then immediately following, the scene where the phoenix rises up behind Mulan, and it symbolizes that Mulan becomes the phoenix herself. It looks beautiful, but ultimately there isn't really a reason for it. Live action Mulan didn't really have a character arc either. She was born powerful, she stayed powerful. The only reason she couldn't show her power was because of tradition, and she ended powerful. So this moment didn't really make a lot of sense, as technically her skill and personality was always like that of a phoenix. Mulan didn't really struggle with anything except her disguising herself as a man, and she didn't really have a fall from grace. and like rise from the ashes, which is what most Western people know is the defining characteristic of like a phoenix. And the phoenix itself, it wasn't really an important character. It was more of a guide that showed up maybe 2 or 3 times, had no like dialogue or screeches of any sort, was just kind of flying through the air for a few seconds in each scene. Also, fun fact, in Chinese culture, the phoenix is a symbol of the Chinese empress. So the only scene that may have, I think I stated this earlier, but the only scene that may have been her rising from the ashes is when she's confronting the witch on the yellow sulfur rocks. And you know, they have that whole voiceover, and you know, it's like they're like Hua Jing died that day, but Hua Mulan lived. So, but is that really a phoenix rising, or is that like, you know, one part of you is just gone, but the other part of you that was always there just kind of keeps going? The part of you that's there is not rising, I don't think. It's just you're just constantly, like, you were battling your own self, and then you defeated that one self, and now it's you. So I'm not sure if that's very phoenixy. If you think it is, let me know in the comments. So then Bori Khan is defeated, and now they're back in the city, the imperial city, and Mulan is getting her dues from the emperor. We see the 1998 Mulan's voice actress, Ming Na Wen, my girl. She makes a cameo, and she was like the best part of the movie. The emperor offers Mulan an official title and job, but Mulan just wants to go home, back to her family, which is how the ballad ended. So I guess like Disney, yeah, did that correctly. But since the movie sets up zero bond between Mulan and her family, the reunion scene is pretty unemotional and dry. Her comrades show up at her village to give her a new sword, which is almost like the ballad, except in the ballad, they only find out Mulan is a female once they visited her village, and she's like taken off all of her, like, you know, warrior attire. So all of this being said, I'm not sure in what way Disney wanted to stay true to the ballad, because Mulan's main inner turmoil is not being who she really is. A powerful woman acting like a man, but in the ballad, Mulan seems to go just fine and pulled it off successfully with no trouble. Like, she spent 12 years in the army without revealing herself to be a female. And I think this is when the line about the rabbits could come into play. Because like the ballad ends with a really great message, and I feel like if they had set up the rabbits correctly in the beginning, like you could have shown the rabbits again at the end. So maybe like in the beginning the rabbits could have been like sitting still, so you can physically tell like which one's a male and a female, and then by the end of the movie the rabbits are like running away together in the distance, so then now you cannot tell a difference between them. Okay, so overall, the live action 2020 Mulan did not follow, at least I think, a logical plot, especially with its characters. I think it lacked emotion and was more historically and culturally inaccurate than the 1998 animated movie. I mean, at least that one was funny. So I'm giving the animated movie a 90, just to account for the few inaccuracies I saw. But I think I'm gonna give the live action a 72, because I could see what they were trying to do with the movie. It's just the execution of it wasn't great. Well, maybe I'll drop like 2 points because of that whole concentration camp scandal. But, so all this being said, I did like parts of the live action movie. Like the cinematography was great. It was colorful and vibrant. I think the fact that Cricket turned into a person, but that the person was still lucky, was funny. Because like he just keeps surviving all these things, like during the avalanche scene when the cart falls, but it falls on him like in just the way that he wasn't crushed and was able to like get out. I think that was really funny. That was I like that a lot. So overall, I will say that I did like the message of live action Mulan. I liked that the message was to always stay true to yourself. Like, don't pretend to be someone you're not. And ultimately, if you stay true to yourself, you will be stronger because of it. And, you know, for Disney, if you wanted to make this movie a Chinese fantasy film, but with a new message like the one I just mentioned, that's fine. But, just actually include Chinese themes and don't market it as something it's not. Like, you made big promises and didn't keep them. If you told us this version of Mulan was going to be more fantasy filled, that's fine. At least you're not lying, and I wouldn't have to make a video explaining why, based on what Disney said, this version of Mulan is not a good one. But overall, I think the second time I watched the live action, I liked it more than the first time. Again, big differences. I think the animated is more accurate. If they made this live action Mulan solely to fix everything that they did wrong, like, you had some good, accuracies in live action, but they were few and far between. Solely based off of the ballad and solely based off of what you said you were promising the audience. Disney. Well, that is my video. So let me know. Did you agree with what I said based on the witches and Mulan's character arc, or are my accuracies and inaccuracies accurate? I'm sure I've left out some that I didn't quite catch. So let me know in the comments if I made a mistake in what I thought was accurate and not accurate. Please let me know. The last thing I want to be is ignorant, and I like learning about this stuff too. So please let me know. Thank you guys so much for listening and for watching. Mulan, animated and live action, has been reeled in. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys. Well, you'll hear me, you'll see me next week.